Morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us at the start of a very important week in the Insurance Charities calendar. I am Adrienne O'Sullivan, Chief Executive Officer at ARAG Legal Protection. After many years of involvement, I'm also very proud to have recently been made the first Honorary President of the Insurance Charities. This charity is the sole charity in the UK and Ireland supporting those of us in the insurance sector. Each year, the charity delivers an awareness raising campaign to spread the word that we are here to support insurance people and indeed our families who might be going through challenging times. I think we can all agree, having lived through the last couple of years, that they've shown us how unforeseen events and curved balls have an enormous impact on both of our lives and our finances. Now more than ever, benevolent charities such as ours are really in the spotlight, and we are highly relevant and very much needed at this time. The cost of living is rising sharply, both in the UK and Ireland, and we're told we can expect more to come. But we'd like to reassure everybody that we are here for us all, including those of you we may have supported in the past. During this webinar, we'll introduce you to the charity, explain exactly who we can help, and highlight the support we can offer to you, your employees and colleagues. By attending this session, you will know who can apply for help from the insurance charities, know how the insurance charity supports past and present insurance people, and have a greater understanding of the part you can play in matching the charity to those in need. Now, I would like to introduce 3 key people from the insurance charities. Firstly, I'd like to welcome Annalie Joy Thornicroft. Joy is Chief Executive and Secretary of the Insurance Charities. Hello, Joy.
Good morning, Adrienne, and good morning, everyone else.
In addition to overseeing the organisation, Joy has led the welfare work within the organisation. Says here for over 30 years. Find that very hard to believe. So thank you very much, Joy. Secondly, I'd like to introduce you to George Evans, who is Joy's assistant and has started training to become a chartered secretary. Hello, George.
Good morning, everyone.
George spent some time in the industry before he joined the insurance charities following his graduation. And finally, I'd like to welcome Ray O'Doherty. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, Adrienne. Lovely to be here.
We'll hear lots from Ray later. Ray has been involved in the charity for many years. He sits on our grants committee and he meets beneficiaries throughout Ireland in his role as a visitor volunteer. Ray has also benefited from our support, and Ray will be sharing his story with us later on. So Joy, can I start please by asking you to explain to everybody how the insurance charities came to be?
Thank you, Adrienne. Insurance charities started well over 100 years ago, when life was very different to how it is today. So at that point, there was no welfare state. So if somebody fell into hardship, things were really difficult for them. In fact, people were either on the streets or in the poorhouses if they found themselves without a job or without the support of a worker. Insurance Charities has actually been the result of 2 charities coming together. Those of you who've worked in the industry for some time will recognise the names of the Insurance Orphans Fund and the Insurance Benevolent Fund. As well as bringing those charities together, we've taken in pots of money from various points in the industry where perhaps it's become difficult for individuals to find the beneficiaries of that class anymore. It might be, for example, because of a merger. There are lots of things, but the whole point really of bringing everything under one roof is that everybody will be treated the same and they can get the same level of expertise and care from our very caring team.
Well, that answers a question I get asked regularly. Why are we charities and not charity? Thank you. George, can I ask you, please, can you explain who can apply for help and whether we need to be working in insurance at the time we apply for help?
Thanks, Adrienne. So you can apply to help with the charity if you are a current or former insurance employee with ideally 5 years of service. If you're at the start of your career, you might not have 5 years service. If you just come out of university or something, let's say you only have 1 year in the industry so far, that's all right as well. So we can see, obviously, the only job you've had so far is in the insurance industry. That's okay as well. you're all right to apply for help. And if you're in receipt of a pension as well, or a deferred pension following 5 years employment in the sector as well, that'd be fine. And also if you're a dependent of a employee or a former employee. So that means it's not always the person that is, you know, the guy that's working in the industry or the woman that's working in the industry. It could be one of their dependents that needs help as well. I think in every case, it's just that the service needs to be within the UK and the Irish insurance industry. There needs to be restricted means of like their financial terms of income and capital are not too great, so they can come to up with us with that. And an element of misfortune needs to have arisen as well. So they're the broader things that we would need.
All really good and salient things to know, George. Thank you. Can you give us some of those examples that you refer to as misfortune?
Sure. So if you are unable to work, maybe because of your health, then your wages become restricted. You might need to help make ends meet. You could come to us with that. If somebody has a disability, you could have property adaptations that you might need to make. We might be able to help out with that as well. If one of your loved ones passed away and the funeral costs are a bit much for you to be able to handle alone, you can come to us and we can help you with that. And let's say if somebody was in an abusive relationship or something, and they needed help with the advanced rent and deposit to get out of that sort of toxic environment in the home, they could come to us and we can help them get out of that.
Yeah, lots of different ways. Before you came to work for the charities, you worked in the insurance world. Did you know there was a dedicated charity for us?
No, I didn't. So I worked for about a year in between 2019 and 2020 for an insurance company. And I don't think I'd ever heard of it once or seen it signposted internally or anything really. I'd never heard of it once before coming here. And I think the company that I was at would have really benefited from hearing about us as well. Because during the time I was there was a period of downsizing and a fair few people lost their jobs. So I think that for them to have known about a charity like us that help out those in the insurance sector, it would have been really beneficial, and I assume that that's the case with a lot of other companies as well. So.
Well, hopefully we can change those views this week during our awareness campaign. You've been with us now for a year, George. Can you tell us maybe how we can help younger people who work in the industry?
So I think for younger workers, I've seen mental health issues come up quite a bit. I think that obviously these can lead to being unable to work and debt building up as well. So I've seen some people before that have mental health issues and use like purchasing as like a comfort, but they don't realize that it's accruing all this debt. And then after a while, it becomes so massive they aren't able to deal with it themselves. And we are able to help out with those sorts of things. And like I mentioned earlier about the unhealthy home situations, people that have these toxic relationships and need to get out of their home, it might be that their partner is abusing their finances and things like that, and they come to us in a really bad financial situation. Or I've seen before, it's not always partners, it can be families as well. We've seen people that have had abusive parents before, and they come to us and they really need to get out of that situation, and we're able to help them get out of that as well.
Yeah, that they're really good stories to highlight, George. Well, good stories is a misnomer, obviously, because I think some people out there might think we're only here to help those of us who are on our pension already. So thank you for that. Joy, can I turn to you, please? Can you explain the types of support that people can apply for? It's not just money, is it?
No, thank you. I think George has only been with us for just over a year, but he's already seen the broad church of cases that come to us. And I think in a way that's one of our problems, that because we deal with so many different types of help, it can be a little bit hard to pinpoint what it is we're actually doing. But when you think about all the different situations that George has mentioned, that's where we can provide help. So some of it, some people need ongoing help because their income is going to be low over a long period of time. Some people need just short-term help because things have got a little bit out of hand and they need the ship steadying a little bit. And some people need help for one-off items, which most of us would find difficult to finance. For example, if we're talking about a child with special needs and they need a large piece of equipment, that could be very difficult for many of us to finance. So it's entirely appropriate for people to come to us with those sort of things. And then again, of course, it can be a very small item. It just depends where you are and as to what you need. So help really, to sum up, might be ongoing, it might be one-off, or it might be just interim.
Okay, thank you. And we're often asked if people have to repay the help we give them. Is that the case?
For the large part, no, that's not the case. Particularly for those who are of working age, we recognise that many people already have quite big commitments, particularly if they're purchasing a property. So much of our help is made on an outright non-repayable basis. There are some circumstances where it's felt appropriate. For example, if somebody owns a property where there's a large amount of equity already, and they're perhaps reaching a time when it's not unreasonable for us to take a loan on the property, then we would do that. But again, those would be charitable terms, so no regular repayments by and large, and most of the loans would be interest-free. So whatever somebody borrows now, that would be the amount that they would repay back, sometimes in 50 years' time.
Wow, that's really, really good to know, Joy. Thank you. So now I would like to introduce you to Ray. We met Ray a little bit earlier. Ray might like to share with us some of his experiences with the charity. So Ray, first of all, you might like to share with us where you're working and what is your role?
So I'm based in Dublin. I am a loss adjuster with Sedgwick. I've been 40 years in the industry, all of which is based in Dublin. I've always worked in the claims arena. And I became aware of the insurance charities before they had changed over from the orphans and benevolent funds, and was always had them in the back of my mind, and became involved with the charity some over 10 years ago as a visitor in Dublin. And subsequently, I took a role as a member of the grants committee, where applications for benefit are considered by a committee called the Grants Committee. So my role has been a visitor in Dublin and as a Grants Committee member in London.
And when did you first contact the insurance charities? Was it after your involvement? Was it before your involvement?
All the way through. I had a very simple problem. My wife, Aileen, contracted cancer in 2012, and her illness progressed over the years. And in 2016, in March of that year, she had to stop work because of declining health. And by April of that year, I had also to stop work to become her full-time carer. But we had 2 teenage boys in university, and we had a mortgage and all the other expenses of life. Aileen ran out of sick pay in her work because this was the 4th year of her illness, and I had to give up my work. So our income was suddenly very dramatically stopped, and yet my commitments were still there. So without any hesitation, I contacted the insurance charities and explained that I needed help with the ongoing day-to-day living expenses and educational expenses of the children. It was as simple and as quick. It happened very quickly. I'd be delighted to say I got a very quick response back from the insurance charities confirming that they would be able to assist both myself and the boys with their fees and with just the day-to-day living expenses. So it was hugely beneficial.
Thank you for sharing. That's a difficult story for you to share. So I really, really appreciate that, Ray.
More than welcome.
Has your situation improved since receiving help from the insurance charities?
Absolutely. The insurance charities were very kind and helped me for the rest of that year until Aileen died in the October of 2016. And after Aileen died, then I was able to go back to work. Things got back on an even keel very rapidly again. So it was a very short period of assistance. Well, not short, to me it was an awful long time, but it was about 6 months, give or take. But that was a very, very important 6 months in our life. And it just took so much worry away from us and allowed us to be there and be present for Aileen and to help her in her final months. It made an enormous difference, huge difference. It's very hard to describe.
You know, your story probably helps so much more than anything I could tell anybody about our insurance charity. So really do appreciate it.
More than welcome.
Another question, please, Ray. Why do you think it's important that employers engage with us?
For several reasons. Like, number one, as George said earlier, in his time as an employee in the industry, he didn't know that the insurance charities existed. So I think it's very important to get the word out there. I would like to think that the insurance charities and employers could work more in partnership, where colleagues, if they've encountered difficulties, there may be certain areas that employers can assist with, but areas outside of that assistance that the insurance charities could step on board. So I think it's for the benefit of the employees and the staff and our colleagues that they would get as much benefit, that they wouldn't be left unassisted, that they know there is somebody there to care for them, either their employer or in certain cases outside of that assistance, that we are there as well. One thing, if I could say, which I feel very strongly about, and I think it's very important, anybody who comes to the insurance charities, their application for assistance is dealt with in the strictest of confidence. Nobody else knows about it. Your local insurance institute doesn't know, your employer doesn't know, nobody else will know. The only people that the insurance charity will discuss with is you, the beneficiary or the applicant. And secondly, we have to remember as well, the fund is there to help people working in the industry. It is our colleagues over many, many years have built up the fund specifically with the instruction that it is there to help those in the industry in need. We have a very objective way of looking at cases for assistance. So we're not doing favors for people. We are being absolutely confidential and objective in how we consider any application for benefit or for assistance. And I think that's really, really important to drive home, that people have the confidence to come to us. There's no embarrassment, there's no difficulty. We are here to help, here to listen, and we will do everything we can to assist. I think that's important to know.
And you are living proof that that is the actual case. Ray, you work as a volunteer for us, you visit beneficiaries. Are there any examples that you would like to share with us, obviously where the beneficiary has agreed for you to share their story?
Well, I was thinking of this earlier when I was preparing for today. I remember a very simple case, we shall remain nameless, that a lady who had various health issues, and she was very, very large in stature, and she was living in a tiny bedsit. And I went in to visit her with another visitor, and she was so big, she had sat on the couch over many years, and it had completely disintegrated. All the four legs had broken. All the springs had disintegrated. So you were sitting about 6 inches off the ground in this tiny, dingy little flat. And she had come to us for assistance, and we were able to assist. But because I could see firsthand what her difficulties were, I suggested to the grants committee that she could do with a new couch as well. That's not something that she had asked for, but it was very obvious from the visit that she needed it. So she was delighted to get a couch that she could sit on with some comfort. Another case I remember dealing with or being involved in the grants committee, and it struck a chord with me. It was a family that had 2 children with significant physical and intellectual disability. And they had moved to a new home, and we had assisted them with that. But when the visitor went out to meet them in their new home, he discovered that their garden at the back of the house was, number one, a wilderness, but at a very much different height to the steps at the back door. So our assistance extended to getting that area landscaped so that the children could get out in their wheelchairs and have an area outside in the fresh air, all on the one level, which gave a huge amount of support to the mum and dad, that, you know, that was an extra room, an extra area for those children to enjoy. And that was really, really important for them. And one that is very dear to our hearts here in Dublin was our lovely friend Cara Leatham, who was born back in 2010, and she has significant cerebral palsy. and she had quite a bit of spasticity in her lower limbs, so she couldn't stand or walk, and she was never going to be able to be self-propelling. So we helped to fund a procedure called a selective dorsal rhizotomy. It's an SDR, it's complicated, but it releases the muscles and the tendons in the legs. And with a huge amount of physiotherapy, she has blossomed. She's running and walking, and she can walk on rough ground. She's not confined to a wheelchair. She's a huge amount of independence. And that bit of assistance made a huge difference to her family, her sibling and her parents. And they're tremendous people. It was an absolute pleasure and an honor to work with them. And she's a great girl, a credit to them. So there's just a couple of the cases that I've been dealing with over the years.
Right, all of those cases resonate with us and superbly shared. Thank you. You're quite a storyteller. But I also remember Cara, and it's very emotional when we remember the first time we met her.
I do indeed, and the smile of her face, even
that?
when she couldn't move, she was just such a great girl.
Just absolutely gorgeous. I actually shared Cara's story with my UK colleagues recently. So yeah,
wonderful girl, wonderful girl.
Thank you very much, Ray. We really appreciate that. Joy, can I turn to you again, please? And this is certainly your area. How does the application process work?
Thank you, Adrienne. Well, again, I'd like to thank Ray, because it's not easy to talk about things that are so very personal. And although he comes across as having had it all sorted, that was an incredibly difficult time for him and his family to lose a wife and a mother at such a young age. And I think it just illustrates that things can happen to any of us. We can have a successful career, we can have things planned, but sometimes things just happen. And it's entirely appropriate that the charity should step in, and that people should feel able to approach us without embarrassment. Those who gave money right at the start, and those who've given money since, they want to give help to people. And we want to create a situation where people don't feel embarrassed about coming to us. And although we need to do checks, etc., it's not to try and count people out. It's definitely to try and count them in. So thank you, Ray. I know it's not easy, although you make it look like it's easy. It's not easy to talk about something that is.
It's a privilege. Thank you.
And so hard. So let me get on to the question you actually asked me, which is, what is the application process? Well, as you've heard, it can be a little bit fluid. So some people will know about us and will get in touch with us directly. Some people won't have heard about us, but will be directed our way, perhaps by a colleague, which again is why this week is so important, because all of you who are listening, you may not be in difficulty yourself, but there may come a time when you hear about somebody who is. And that's where you have such an important role to play, because a friendly word from somebody who is concerned about somebody can encourage that person to approach us, rather than think it's too difficult or it's too embarrassing. So individuals can approach us directly. Companies can approach us if they know of somebody who's going through a difficult time, and then sometimes outside organisations as well. And I always feel if somebody's come from via an outside organisation, we as an industry have failed a bit, because if they need to go outside to be told about a charity inside, there's something that we still need to work on. So somebody will apply to us. We will need to establish, as George has spoken about, those three elements really: hardship, financial hardship, something they can't finance themselves, an element of misfortune, and that can cover a whole range of things: disability, marital breakdown, death, a whole load of things. But just some reason why the person is in a more difficult financial position. And then the insurance connection. So we just need to establish that insurance has been their main employment. It could be more than 5 years. It could, as George has explained, be less than 5 years if someone has a very short working life. So we would confirm those details, and as Ray has said, we confirm them confidentially. Sometimes the applicant can provide everything we need without us going anywhere else. Sometimes we might ask the company just to confirm service, but the applicant can get that themselves, and the individual wouldn't need to disclose it. It's because they're applying to us. So once we've confirmed that the person is eligible in those three respects, we then move on to making an assessment of the case. And if we're able to, a home visit really helps, because people don't always ask for what they need. They ask for something, but behind that, there's a whole load of other things that we could help with it if we knew about them. So we've had obviously challenges over the last couple of years about home visits, but we are going to be starting them up again in the autumn. And in the meantime, we're carrying out some video meetings for those who are able to do that. But we really want to know the whole package. What is it that people really need? And sometimes people are a little bit reluctant to ask for everything. They kind of think, well, if I ask for one thing, at least that's a bit better than it was. But sometimes that's not the real thing that they need. So a home visit certainly is the best way. And it also enables somebody to build up a relationship with the person who's visiting them. And so we're not as remote as we might otherwise be. Once we have a complete picture of the finances and the circumstances, then we would put that to our grants committee, a group of people who really care about getting the right result for somebody. I'm going to talk about it later on, but whatever is needed, we are in such a blessed position that we can do it for them. So whether it's £200 or dare I say £200,000, we are placed at the moment in a position where we could cover all of those. And then we go back to the person. We try and do as quick a turnaround as we can. We have quarterly meetings, but we can deal with things between meetings. I think if everything is working together, we could certainly turn something around within a week, and that's something we're really proud of.
Wow, that's smart. And it was the question I was going to ask, sort of typically how long would an application take? So that's really, really good to know. And I think Ray also he sort of highlighted the importance of visiting people, because he did pick up other areas, as you quite rightly said, Joy, where we might be able to help, but the beneficiary themselves mightn't realize it. So yeah, really, really good to know. Another question that we're asked regularly, Joy, how does the support we give fit with things like state benefits, redundancy packages? How do we fit into those processes?
Well, one of the areas that we talked about, the eligibility criteria, is financial need. So we do need to take up details about what applicants have. And it may be that at the time they come to us, they have the resources, but they're worried for the future. So it may be that we're giving them reassurance. If someone's just been made redundant, their package might be sufficient to see them through for this month and possibly next month, but they might be worried about a few months down the line. So it's always as well to make an early application, because even if we can't help immediately, we've got the person on the radar, they know what we need in order to consider an application moving forward. So we do take into account what people have, and that might include a redundancy package. With respect to benefits, obviously it's really important that people receive everything they're entitled to from the state, first of all. So we can help with benefit applications. We can suggest if we think perhaps they're entitled to something they're not receiving. So our payments come in after somebody is getting everything they're entitled to. And if, for example, somebody needs adaptations to a property, it might mean that they are able to apply for a grant. And again, we would suggest that, so that any help that comes from the insurance charities, which after all has been given by individuals at some point in the past, that is used for essential costs which can't be financed from the state or from the local authority.
Oh, that's also really, really good to know, and a question I get asked reasonably regularly. Now, at the very outset, we spoke about that the Insurance Charities doesn't only give financial assistance, but also we give some practical help and advice too. So we have partnered with some other charities. Would Joy and George perhaps like to talk us through those?
Yeah, we're going to just talk about a few of the partnerships we have. I think for a long time we've realised that sometimes financial help alone does not solve an issue that someone might come with. So the first partnership I want to talk about is shelter. For those people who have a housing concern, whether it is an owned property or a rented property, we have bought from shelter professional advice, so that somebody can come with a very complex question or a situation that they're in, and shelter will provide relevant professional information to that individual, which might help them resolve a conflict with a landlord or with perhaps a lender. So that's a really practical way that we can signpost people to the support that we've actually purchased in advance for them to access.
We're also partnered with the Alzheimer's Society. So obviously anyone with dementia, they can come to us because we're now an official Dementia Connects referral partner. So this is where we can connect you with a whole range of dementia support services by phone, online, face-to-face. It's all free, easy to access, and it will put you in touch with an actual dementia advisor as well, who will offer you the support that you need. This is for anyone with all types of dementia, diagnosis or pre-diagnosis. And once you've been referred, you should be able to receive a call within a week from an actual dementia advisor to discuss your sort of ongoing support with them.
And we've actually just this morning had somebody who's come to us wanting this type of support. It can be very scary when you receive a diagnosis of dementia, but the Alzheimer's Society is really well placed to encourage, to provide practical advice to the individual and or their family members, and just to signpost as well to what might be available locally. Sometimes your mind is in a whirl when you think, oh my goodness, what is my life going to look like from this situation moving forward? But we've got some lovely stories of people who've had some really practical help just to steady the ship and to reach out into the community to find out what there is available so that they actually have first-hand knowledge and not hearsay about what might happen to them. I'm so delighted to move on to the partnership with Aware. This has been a really positive involvement for us as a charity. We funded a number of courses for those with mild to moderate anxiety and depression. And I think all of us will know somebody who either lives with that on an ongoing basis or who has from time to time come up with something which has caused them extreme anxiety and concern. And these courses have been really practical in helping people gain the tools to manage the condition and just make sure that they can move forward with confidence in themselves, that actually they have now resources available to them, that the depression and the anxiety doesn't need to overtake them, but they can, either in their job or even in their personal life, just be more confident that what they've gained is going to be something which they can use moving forward. So that's a really lovely thing. And a little bit of sort of hot news, although it's still in bubbling, is that we're talking to Aware about possibility of some cases for those who've recently come into the industry, perhaps over the past couple of years, and haven't been onboarded in the same way as those of us who joined. And you mentioned 30 years. I need to talk to you about that, Adrienne. All those years ago, who had proper induction, proper training, got to meet our colleagues face to face. For a lot of people, that wasn't their experience during the pandemic. And we recognise that now things are changing and people are being encouraged perhaps into an office where they're not familiar with their colleagues and they're not familiar with the routine. That is causing anxiety and concern for some people. And so we're exploring whether there is a possibility of a couple of courses which might give people the tools to engage in their employment situation with more confidence than they might otherwise have.
Yeah, it's really good. We didn't realise how lucky we were in the old sitting by Nelly days, you know, where we learned literally sitting beside somebody. But yes, I do hope we can get this initiative off the ground for young starters into the insurance world. And we've mentioned employers a couple of times and how important it is for them to get involved with employees. Lots of employers have CSR initiatives. Are there any volunteering opportunities, Joy, through any of these partnerships which would help to meet them?
Yes, there are. I'm actually going to hand that over to George because that's part of the section he'd like to talk about.
So yes, thanks, Adrienne. We have companion calls as well through the Alzheimer's Society. So this is just up to an hour a week, making friendly calls. It's nothing, you don't need to be a specialist or anything like that. It's just a friendly call to someone to have a chat, only up to an hour a week, to those affected by dementia. So this can be just something to take somebody's mind off their diagnosis or just something for them to do. It's just a nice chat for them to have, up to an hour a week, as we said. So that's just something nice that somebody can do. And all the information for that is on our website as well, if anyone's interested.
Great, thank you. And George, again to you. I often get asked how the charity is funded. Can you explain how this happens and how much perhaps we award in a typical year?
Sure. So we're mostly funded through large historical donations which then became our investments, which we can invest and use from there. We do also obviously have donations from individuals and from local institutes, which a lot of the time for us, the best thing about that is not always the financial side of it. The fundraising itself is good to just spread awareness about us. I think the little things that whoever it is, the individual or the institutes do is probably good because it just spreads our name out there as well. As for how much we award in a typical year, so 2021, 2022, we awarded £612,000 and 1.7 million the year before. Even though it's obviously gone down quite a bit, not always, like Joy was mentioning earlier, it's not always the larger things that mean that we're making more help or giving more help. It can be something simple like if you need a dishwasher or a washing machine or something like that, that might financially not stack up in the stats at the end of the year. For that particular person, that might really matter. And if they don't have the, however much it costs, even if it's not that much to us, that still makes the world of difference to them as well, I think.
Yeah, it's really good to know. One of the issues that always resonated with me was we helped a family where we supplied a school uniform for the children, you know, and how emotional, how fabulous is that in a September? We're sending our children back to school in the full garb like everybody else. So thank you very much, George, for that. Joy, we've lived through a very unusual couple of years. Have you seen any trends in terms of the circumstances that have driven people to us? You know, if you read the headlines, you see things like mental health, which George has referred to a couple of times, mental health issues are on the increase, domestic violence perhaps is on the increase. Are there any trends you might have seen?
I think if I look back over my long career, I would definitely say that we're helping more people who are working in insurance than we ever did. I think when I first started, it was mainly elderly widows who in retirement found that when their spouse died, actually a lot of their income went. Financial situations are actually very complex now compared to some of the situations like I first encountered. So it's not unusual for people to have a second family or even a third family. So somebody approaching retirement could still have quite sizable commitments rather than reaching the point where actually a mortgage is paid off and things are a lot easier. So I think probably that's one trend that I've noticed, that actually financial situations are complex. People often have quite a high level of commitment for a lot of their working life. So even a small drop in income over a short period of time can actually disrupt a family's financial position and cause concern. And I think that's what happens, Adrienne, that one issue might lead to something else, and then the pressure of one or two or three things coming together can mean the whole situation unravels. So it could be, as George has mentioned, it could be a domestic abuse situation. It could be actually that once somebody gets together in a company and feels a little bit more confident, they then do realise actually they've been in a domestic abuse situation for quite a long time, but because they didn't have the confidence of their colleagues around them, they didn't feel able to mention it to anyone. So sometimes these things can come to a head, and somebody will then gain the confidence to come to us if they know there's something that can be done. If somebody feels actually there's no way out of this, even if I want to leave, even if I feel I should leave, well, how am I going to manage? Once they hear that actually something could be done to help them, then sometimes that situation can start to resolve. And it's a long situation to resolve, but sometimes those first steps can be taken. So yes, domestic abuse, mental health, which, as I say, can affect people sometimes all their working life or sometimes for part of it. Those are certainly trends where we are seeing help is being given more by the charity.
Sure, you mentioned domestic abuse. We've sponsored a domestic abuse toolkit. Could you explain perhaps to us how or what that is exactly? And it was certainly new to me when I heard about it originally.
Yes, thank you. As part of another organisation that we are a member of, we became aware of a need to create a handbook which could be used by employers of all sizes, and sometimes very large employers already have some of their policies in place, but sometimes smaller employers and medium-sized employers actually haven't got in place policies to help in a number of situations. And it became obvious that this organisation would really like to put out there free of charge a handbook so that employers could recognise and support victims and perpetrators of domestic abuse. And it came at a time when we were looking to create partnerships, and having discussed it with the organisation and obviously with the board, it was agreed that this would be a useful tool for insurance employers. So we funded the original handbook. We launched it into the insurance industry, and it's quite amazing how many employers have actually accessed it and used it to make sure that they've got something in place should they come across an employee who is going through that really, really difficult situation. And then more recently, we funded an update to it. Obviously, in the pandemic, work and what work looks like changed for a lot of people. So it became really important that the handbook was up to date, relevant, because actually for some people, their workplace became their home, and their home became their workplace, and everything was a little more muddied than it had been. So we did the original, and we've also been pleased to fund the update recently too.
Yeah, really great work. And you've highlighted so well how things have changed over the years and how our help might be differing, but there's still a lot of myths out there. So how about we go through a couple of the questions we're asked and sort of what people might believe we do as a charity. So the first one that I get asked, and I'm sure we all do get asked regularly, do I need to be a member of a professional body such as the CII, the III, or CILA to apply for help?
The answer is no. Obviously, if you are a member of one of those bodies, it's fantastic, and you'll be getting support with your career development, etc., and you are eligible to apply to us. But anybody who comes to us, they do not have to be a member of any professional body.
Okay, so I'm retired, or I'm not currently working at the moment. Can I apply?
You can. As George mentioned earlier, we're looking to help insurance people from the insurance industry. So if your career has been in insurance, or if you've had a long period of time in insurance and you've either retired or you're not working at the moment, then you can apply too.
And I guess the same applies if I'm quite new into the insurance world, but I've chosen it as my career. So
absolutely.
I can apply.
Yes, absolutely. If you've started out in insurance and then sadly misfortune hits you, then we would say that you are somebody who's committed to the industry and somebody who therefore the insurance industry's charity should be helping.
Yeah, absolutely. Ray highlighted very, very nicely and very succinctly earlier, but should we be concerned about contacting the insurance charities? Are you going to tell my employer?
What we need to do, Adrienne, is we need to establish all those areas of eligibility. So if you can provide independent confirmation of what we require, so that might be via bank statements about finances, it might be something that you already have from your employer, so it could be pay slips spanning a period of time, and then obviously something which confirms what the misfortune is, there would be no reason for us to contact your employer.
Very, very good to know. Okay, so we've lots of different people from across the UK and Ireland watching today. We're working in all different elements of the insurance world, from the very top to all in between, very bottom. If people want to get more involved, Joy, how can they get involved? How can they help us raise awareness?
I think the first thing is to tell your colleagues. Sometimes, and hopefully now that we're back in our offices, or mainly back in our offices, we're sitting alongside people, we chat through what's going on in our lives to a greater or lesser degree, and you might be the only person that knows that your colleague is going through a really hard time, or that their partner isn't working at the moment because of something, or that their child has some special needs, because sometimes when we're at work, we can be that different person. We don't have to be the carer, we don't have to be the one with concerns, because we can be the employee. We don't always want to tell our employer that we're perhaps vulnerable or we've got difficult situations, because we don't want to be the one who might stand out as not being able to do their job. So I think, first of all, tell your colleagues, listen to your colleagues and signpost them to us. Secondly, we've got Awareness Week, obviously we're in the middle of. It's really important that we just engage with what's going on, because again, by us engaging, perhaps on our social media, somebody could pick up on the fact that the charity is there and could help. So I think it's all these ways, whatever our network groups are, just to sort of chat about the insurance charities I know it doesn't sound like it's a great subject, but actually that help that could be given could be absolutely life-changing. And we could be the person who could unlock it for somebody else.
Completely agree, Joy. Thank you. George, so aside from our annual awareness campaign, are there any other ways that employers particularly could get more involved?
Yeah, sure. So there are definitely some ways that employees can get more involved. I would say we've got flyers and posters readily available that have a lot of information about what we do on there. It's quite easy for people to take a look at on a snapshot and then be able to determine what we actually do. So we can give those away. If people were to email us, we can send those out. We have giveaways as well that we can send out. So if people were to email us, we can send out little giveaways for them as well. We can deliver in-company talks, attend events that companies are holding to spread a bit more awareness about ourselves as well. We've got content that we've got readily available. We can send out. People need anything for internal messaging like newsletters, intranets, line manager, HR materials. We've got stuff that we can send out to you if you need anything for that as well. We have a dedicated webpage for HR professionals. We also recruit from time to time trustees, volunteers. So we encourage people to look out for that in our newsletters and things like that as well. Obviously, I think another key one, an easy one as well, is just to follow us on social media. If you can just do things like liking, sharing, commenting, reacting, it's a really easy way, but a really simple way that helps our posts get further up on the social media feeds. Because that's just the easiest way for it to happen. I think just a little like or a share or something like that. I'd also say as well, it'd be helpful for anyone to get in touch with us, just to tell us what sort of resources and information they need or they'd like to be able to share with their organisation, and then we can sort of tailor make something and send something out to them or signpost them to what it is that they need as well.
So lots of ways, so no excuses,
Yeah.
lots of ways to get involved. Good stuff. Before we finish, and we're coming to an end very shortly, I'd like to share some chief takeaways, now already covered by George, Annalie, Joy and Ray, but just sort of to reiterate stuff like, please look at your professional network. Just if there's anybody there who might be going through a challenging time, just let them know we're there to help. Ask them to get in touch with us. Look at our website, follow us on social media, have a look at what we do and how we might be able to help. We're very keen for line managers, wellbeing reps, the HR and CSR teams to know what we do and how we can help their colleagues. I'd really encourage you all to share what you've learned today. Even if it's only one piece of info, just bring it back with you, please. Don't forget those who are no longer working in the insurance world, our retired colleagues. They're sometimes a bit more difficult to get in touch with. So don't forget about them and make sure that they're still well and can contact us if they need to. We'd like for you all to stay connected to us. I mean, George has already mentioned about the different ways you can, but follow us on LinkedIn, on all our social media platforms, and sign up to our e-newsletter. It brings us all the information, all the salient stuff that's going on a quarterly basis. And something that Ray highlighted, and it's very important to realize how confidentially everything you do with us is kept. We don't let anybody else know, except in very exceptional circumstances and with your permission. It's completely confidential, and there's an objective set of ways we deal with every single application. So now there are no excuses. You know who the insurance charities help. You know how the insurance charity supports past and present insurance people. And hopefully you have a greater understanding of the part you can play in matching the charity to those in need. We really look forward to working with you and your employers, your colleagues, to ensure that nobody who might be in need goes without our support.